Hey Latinas,
I'm Nastasia.
and I'm Ariadna, y vamos a latear un poco. We're empowered Latinas who want to make you feel celebrated, inspired, and heard by providing Lati.
LaTeaNa is a weekly podcast that can be found anywhere. We are raising our voices and making an impact by diving deeper on the topics that get swept under the rug and more.
Frequently having guest Latinas who are making a powerful difference. Join us to expand this great community.
Let's pour some tea. Hello, LaTeaNas.
Hi,
Hi.
hi Latinas, how are you all?
We are so super and positively thrilled because we have the very talented and beautiful Arianna Davis here with us today. Hi, Arianna.
Hi, you guys. Thank you so much for having me. I love whenever I go from hearing a podcast that I love and that I listen to, and then now being on the podcast, it's still like surreal. So I'm so happy to be here today.
Oh, thank you so much. I think I've been probably doing like cartwheels all week, prepared for this. I'm like, I get to talk to her today. I'm so super excited.
That definitely makes two of us. Like,
Yeah.
immediately, like the moment that we saw your feed and we saw more about your book, and we're like, oh my God, we have to get her on. And then what you said that you also listened to us, we're like, oh my God.
No, I love it. I am super excited to chat with you both today.
Guys, she is the author of a novel, What Would Frida Do, that just released this last Tuesday on the 20th. And we are here to get all of the freaking tea. We are so genuinely thrilled for you. And I watched the video of you finally getting to meet your book in person. A day that I think it was like on your caption, it was like, you've been looking forward to this day since you were 8 years old. And I want to know if it was everything you've ever imagined. How are you digesting this dream come true? What is going on through your head? I need to know everything.
Well, I mean, first of all, thank you for the support and for even, for being so supportive of What Would Frida Do. I have to say it's, there's been highs and lows. I think highs meaning like I'm just grateful, just the fact that I'm even releasing a book, the fact that I had words in my head that are now on paper that people will read all around. I mean, it's really incredible. And as I said, it was a moment, I've dreamed of since I wanted to be a writer as a kid, but things are a little different being in a pandemic. And even just the act of like, I think that for so long, because I'm one of those rare people that's always known what they wanted to do. So literally since I think I was around 8, as an avid reader and also just a kid who was always had their head in the clouds and always wanted to be a writer, writing a book was something that I always dreamed of. And so I feel like I had so many expectations in my head of what this moment would be like. And even while writing the book, being excited about, getting to do book signings and being at book tours and like touching people and giving them hugs while I give them the book. And now we're in a pandemic, right? So
Right.
things are a little bit different. And, everything is virtual, and even the act of like getting my box of books, like I just always had all these ideas planned of like I would have friends over and they would like watch me open the box of books, like all of these things that I had thought in my head. Things are happening a little bit differently, so it definitely has taken a little bit of an adjustment period of being like, okay, it's not necessarily what you envisioned, but like this is what it is, and like how do we celebrate that now in its own way. So I've been trying to just embrace the moment as much as possible and not let any of what my expectations were, as your question of like what I had envisioned. I think I envisioned it differently, but that doesn't make it any less exciting, and it doesn't make me any less excited. I think for me, because I have been, working from home, working remotely, haven't had as much contact with people as I normally would have.
Yeah.
Actually like seeing the book and getting it in my hands is finally what really made it feel real. That like I have a book, I wrote a book, and it's coming out, and it's here, and I have, a copy in my hands, and I can see my name, as the author on the cover. So that moment, I think, just had so many emotions wrapped up in it when I finally got to open the box of books and be like, she's here, she has arrived.
Can you tell us a little bit about the story? Just the background of how it started. Tell us what it's about. I'm pretty sure all of our listeners want to know.
Sure, yeah. So What Would Frida Do is, I like to say it's, part self-help, part biography. Obviously, there's been so many biographies and books that have been written about Frida over the years. And this is my take on her life, but also the lessons that we can take from her life. And also one of the reasons why the timing of now felt so important is that I think a whole new generation of people, even since like the Frida movie with Salma Hayek came out in 2002, and even since the last really big Frida biographies came out, I think that because of social media, Frida has taken on even now a whole other life where her quotes are everywhere. You know, there's like vintage photos of her on Pinterest. There's like, you know, people I think in the social media era love to share and spread the essence of Frida. But I think that there is a generation who doesn't necessarily know her story, or they know she had a lot of life obstacles, but they don't know the details. So this book is, you know, it's definitely telling Frida's story, and it's exploring why she was such an icon, why she's lasted so many generations after her death as someone that, you know, whether you're Latina or you're just a woman or you're just somebody who celebrates being other, she's just become a symbol for all of those things. So it definitely explores, you know, who she is, and it is part biography, but it also, one of my favorite parts of what I got to do with the book was each chapter is about a different part of her life. So there's a chapter on creativity, there's a chapter on style, there's one on love, heartbreak, sex, friendship. Like there's different chapters, and each chapter has, at the end of it, I kind of extrapolate what I think are some of the lessons we can take from her in all of those areas. So it's definitely a fun book. It's not like a straight, you know, nonfiction biography. It's biography, but it's also fun. It's also, I hope, will be inspiring, and I hope every chapter will have a few little nuggets that people can take from it and learn from the life of Frida and how to live a more bold life.
What would you say like your process is? Do you feel like, do you outline first? Do you just go with the flow? What's your process when you start writing a book?
I'm definitely an outliner. I mean, this is my first book, right? So I've dabbled a little bit in like some ideas in the past, and it's funny because I actually always thought that my first book would be a novel. That was always like what I really wanted to do was fiction. But this, you know, the opportunity to work with Seal Press came about, and I was just like, the idea of writing about Frida, who's always been, you know, who's been a lifetime icon for me. It was just so incredible. So this was kind of the direction life took me in. And I think because I am a journalist, you know, like I come from the newspaper and magazine world, and anytime I write a story, I usually do start with outlining. So for me with the book, I think outlining, especially because Frida's a real person, right? I knew this was going to require so much research, and this was not something that I could just kind of go off the top of my head. Like it was going to require a whole lot of research and time, and just making sure I knew what I was talking about, and I was fact checking, and it was definitely a big process. So I started with outlining, and then from there I pretty much honestly went in order, because this kind of happened naturally, but the book is written chronologically, but it's also by category. So it's written chronologically, starting with creativity, and I kind of start with like the beginnings of her life and when she first started dabbling in art, and then it goes into pain, and that's when I start talking about the accident that she got into and some of the surgeries that she went through during her lifetime, and then so it went chronological, but also by category, and so that definitely required a lot of like organization and outlining. But once I had the outline, and once I had kind of like the shell, when that part was done, I think that was the hard part. And then from there, the writing was the fun part, and just kind of coloring inside the lines, I guess, that I had kind of created.
I love that. I mean, LaTeaNa, as you guys know, what I do, and for those who are new to LaTeaNa, I run a television and film production company, and also occasionally write screenplays. And sometimes when I'm writing, I do go the outline route, but even then sometimes like my mind is like, oh, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And then all of a sudden it's like an entire being takes over me, and I'm like, oh, I'm not following my outline anymore. Apparently I'm going on a whole new direction, and now the story is just a little bit different, and I have to now adjust. Did that happen to you at all, or were you pretty straightforward with it?
No, it definitely took, I mean, you know, I think at some point, you know, things take a life of their own. And there was I think the original order definitely changed around. And even with I think from the original outline to what I ended up with, some of the categories or like the themes that I thought of, like, I think the friendship chapter was actually something that I ended up replacing something else with, because that's actually one of my favorite chapters, because I think when we talk about Frida and her life and her history, we know about her art, we know about her in Diego, we know about, you know, a lot of those things. But what I found really fascinating when I was researching the book and learning about her life is that she had such an interesting circle of friends, and so many of the quotes that we see, like some of those Frida quotes that I was saying you see all over Pinterest and all over Instagram, came from the letters that she wrote to friends over the years. And that's really how I feel like I got to know Frida so well through this process was reading her letters and her journal entries. And many of those letters were written to friends that she had these beautiful relationships with. So that was something that it wasn't until I think I was like getting closer to maybe the end of the book that I thought it would be really cool to just take a look at like who were the people around her, who was her crew, who were the people that she leaned on for, you know, whether it was like she was going through hard times with Diego or hard times with her illnesses, or she was going through a dry spell with painting. So that was like an example, I think, of one chapter where I think I had some, I don't even remember what the original was there, but while writing it, I realized like that to me felt like a more important theme than whatever originally I had there. So there was definitely a lot of like, as I was writing and going along, just kind of adjusting to what felt like more natural and authentic to the book.
I love that. I think that's so fucking awesome. Sorry for the cursing. Not sorry.
No, girl.
Not sorry, but
do not apologize. It's a pandemic. We are all cursing a lot. Okay, there's a lot going on.
Okay, so I want to talk about living boldly for just a minute. I feel like we, especially women, are always told to live smart or live comfortably, live carefully, don't color outside the lines, fit in, adjust. But your book is basically saying F that. Like it's almost liberating in a way of like this guide to living boldly. And I just want to know like what have about your bold living choices as of lately and how you've been living boldly since this all began.
I mean, I think for me, you know, Frida, I think one of the reasons why I do think our culture and our society has in the past few years finally started to move towards women really taking charge of their own narratives and living more boldly and being more accepting of who they are and embracing that. And I think that that's why Frida, I think, is having another resurgence, because she has always, I think, been iconic for, she was so far ahead of her time. If we think about, you know, when she was alive, she was really coming of age in like the 1930s. And that was not a time when Mexican women, Latino women, women period, were being encouraged to live boldly or to like, you know, like the idea of a woman during that time painting a painting about her miscarriage and like featuring, you know, the fetus after it had left her body, and or like the idea of a woman at that time you know, being queer and not apologizing about it, or there's just so many things that she did that were so far ahead of her time, and she was not apologetic about it. You could read it in her letters and her journals. It wasn't something that she thought a lot about. She just was who she was, and she lived very boldly. And so I think that's why, one of the reasons why, you know, with this book, just even the fact that she was doing all of those things so far ahead of where we even are now, I think is why we can, you know, take inspiration from that. And for women who have been told don't color outside the lines, or who have been receiving these kinds of messages, she's a really great example of the fact that like, that's nice that that's what you're told, but that it's not how you have to be, or that's not who you have to be. You can, you know, be your brightest, boldest self. And so that's, you know, definitely something with the book I even found inspiration from as I was researching and writing and working on it. And I just kept coming back to like, wow, when you just read about or hear her story, you're like, wow, she was badass. But when you put it in context of like the timing and the fact of this was the 1920s, 30s, 40s, and she was Mexicana, and she was, you know, this, and this, like if you think about all of that, it just makes you really blown away by how just truly daring and authentic and herself she was. And so for me, I think, you know, it's helped me, like, even with this book and putting out a book, like sometimes I have moments where I'm like, I don't like to be too like self-promotional, and like I don't want to like post too much about the book, or I don't want to talk about it too much, or I want to be humble and be like, yes, I have a book coming out, but like I don't, you know, it's I think because as women, that's like how we're taught to be. And
please don't do that. Please. Oh my
well,
God,
you took the words out of my mouth.
I'm gonna let you finish, but I'm about to yell at you. Go ahead.
No, I mean, but it's something that I literally think, like, it sounds probably a little corny, but now, like, literally what Frida do is like a mantra for me. And that anytime I do have moments of self-doubt, or moments where I am, you know, maybe feeling imposter syndrome, or moments where I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this thing because X, like thinking about what Frida would do, and the answer usually is mostly like, do it. Like usually the answer is like, what would Frida do? It's like, she would say like, forget all of that and just do it. And obviously Frida wasn't perfect. Obviously, you know, there's also in the book, I talk a lot about the ups and downs of her relationship with Diego, and you know, they had a very tumultuous like roller coaster relationship. And so it's not like everything in Frida's life is something we should all aspire to, right? It's not that. It's that at the end of the day, she was unapologetic about it. She didn't care that people had thoughts on her marriage and called him the elephant to her dove. Like, she was like, that's nice, but like, that is my man and I love him and I'm right. Like that was what she was just so like boldly always move forward in what she wanted. And even the fact that her art was obviously very different than what any painters, much less women painters, would ever be doing. I mean, she just was very unapologetic about it all. So I think for me, the idea of what would Frida do has definitely become a mantra and a question that I ask myself, and I hope that it will do the same for anyone who reads the book.
I love that. I absolutely freaking love that. I think that's so fucking awesome.
Thanks. I mean,
I agree.
It's you know, I write about it a little in the book, but like I felt a lot while writing that I did feel in ways that Frida was with me. And I don't mean that as like the ghost of Frida or like that it was like the spirit of Frida, but it felt almost like she was almost like a guiding force, I think, for like the writing and just what the message was that I wanted to get across. And it's something that I, you know, again, I hope people will also feel and take away when they read the book. But, you know, it's also, we're living in really challenging times. And I think that it's more important now than ever for us to all kind of take a step back and reflect on our lives and what we want and what we hope for. And so I think just the idea for women, especially for women of color, with all of the like pressures and anxieties that we're all dealing with right now, to have a little bit of inspiration and encouragement to just be you and be bold, I think is really necessary.
Yeah.
And I think a little bit going back to what you were saying earlier, that it happened during COVID, you know, when your book launched a little bit different than you imagined. The moment that I started hearing about your book and reading more into it, I was like, it actually comes in a perfect time. I feel like this message is so empowering that even the captions that you write about your book wouldn't be right before it was going to come out and things like that. And you're like, oh, like you feel that vibe and that essence, that magic, whatever you want to call it. And I feel like that's a message that we really clearly need, especially us, obviously, to like lift each other up higher and like really be like, okay, so what would Frida do? And I love that. And I really admire that a lot. And I appreciate that a lot, coming as a writer myself, as a reader myself, someone who looks up to people like you to be like, I did that, you know, I'm going to spread this message because it's what I believe in, and this is a message that like we need to hear. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for that and for saying that. And you know, it's crazy because when I wrote the book, I mean, obviously we were pretty much in final, like I was like in the final like small copy edits of the book when COVID began. So the book was pretty much done already before this pandemic. And there are times where like sometimes, you know, because I think I read the final draft. I want to say like it was like sent off. It was like done and done. Like you can't make any more major changes, I think, by like June. But at that point, it was like it was only like you could make small grammatical things. And as I was rereading the book, I had a moment where I was like, damn, I really wish that I could have written this more during the pandemic, so there would be advice and like we would be able to like think about how to apply some of these lessons to the pandemic. But now that I think about it, also, I'm like, I think that it's like, I feel like we get it. We all know we've been in a pandemic. We all have been like, we know what it's like working from home. We know that it, you know, I just feel like we don't necessarily need like more reminders that we're in a pandemic. And I do think that there are lessons in the book. Obviously, Frida, of all people, is someone we can take lessons from. She was someone who spent months and months at a time stuck in bed, couldn't be mobile. Like she was just recovering from so many different illnesses in her life. And those are some of the lessons that are in the book that I think if people are feeling, you know, stuck in a rut or stuck at home, they can definitely take lessons from her and from the book in their own ways.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Does this mean, I know you were talking about how we might not want to we're all living in a pandemic. So how much of it do we want to relive again? But does this mean that we might possibly get a book two? I
have a few ideas percolating in my brain. You know, I've had a few different ideas in my mind for like novels or like rom-coms, totally different direction, obviously, than a book like this. But I also do love the idea of, I mean, it's been such an honor. And so I've learned so much, and it's been so inspirational to work on a book about someone from history in just like this kind of nonfiction kind of way. So There'll definitely be a book 2. I just don't know what it'll be, what direction I want to go. I'm trying to just like follow my heart next. But like I said, fiction has always been where I like, that's always been the dream. And as someone who's like an avid reader, my apartment is literally like full of books. People are always like, what is wrong with you? You need to get some of these away. But I think that, that's always been the goal. And so I think that whatever book 2 ends up being, it will definitely come. I just kind of am like trying to take the moment to enjoy what would Frida do and enjoy this moment. And then I'll start thinking about what's next.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
I love that.
Would you ever consider a different book? Well, the same kind of thought of like, what would Frida do? But instead of Frida, of course, again, a different historical character?
Yeah,
it's inspired by?
It's definitely something that has crossed my mind. And I mean, having worked on this book, there's so many other women I've been inspired by that I have thought of book ideas for. So I'm kind of like, I think it's just a question of what really as a writer, obviously, and also, again, thinking of like, what would Frida do? I'm always trying to think about like, my new thing is just thinking about what resonates and resounds with my heart the most, and what do I really feel like I would be the most passionate about writing. So that's what I'm trying to tap into now. But it is a little hard, not gonna lie, with like trying to, work on this book and getting this baby out into the world. And then I also do have a day job as digital director for Oprah Mag, which can be, even in a pandemic, it's crazy. I've been busier than I would have thought. Like I remember when I first heard working from home, I was like, this is gonna be the best. I'll be able to have lunch breaks and I can work in my pajama. And like, it just sounded so great. But I feel like because we all are doing everything on Slack and Zoom and we're connected 24/7, that I've been actually, I think, busier than ever during this during this time period. So it's definitely been a little bit of a balancing act, even though some days I'm like, I can't believe I feel so busy, and I'm literally just like in the same little New York studio apartment all day, every day. But it's just how, I guess it's like, I think just because we're all so plugged in, it's very easy. It's harder now that we're also exactly.
It felt really slow in the beginning when this all hit, because like I think everyone was still trying to find like their grounds. Okay, how do we as a company like work in this situation to where we're all at home? How do we do this? So I feel like it was slow for a bit. And even for me, I caught myself slacking in the beginning. I was like, I'm not gonna have to do anything. Like, no one's developing right now. No one's gonna be buying TV shows or movies right now because we're not gonna be filming. Like, there's no way that's gonna happen. And then like 2 weeks later, it was like, no, Nastasia, get off your ass and do your fucking job. And I was like, oh, okay, we're working. I did not.
No, I definitely agree with Arianna, because like, first of all, you do everything in a small room or like wherever it is that you're at. Some people, like, I don't have an office space, so I do like everything here. And not only that, but like what you said, you're connected more because everyone's connected now. Like now, like when you were at meetings, you're not connected, obviously. So you're face to face, or like you're shooting, etc. But now even this things like that, you're like, oh, you do get the notifications and you do have to look at the emails again and again. And so I've heard that comment a lot lately since the pandemic happened, of like, I have more work now than ever before. How is that possible?
Yeah, it's nuts. And I think that me as a boss, I have a team of 8 people, and I try to be cognizant of that, because I even catch myself sometimes like, like it'll be late at night and I'm just on my laptop catching up on emails, and it's very easy to send some Slack messages or like, and I don't want my team to feel like just because like, I'm plugged in and it's 9:30 and I happen to be on my laptop, because like, what else am I doing? But I also don't want them to feel the pressure to also be plugged in 24/7. But then on the other hand, we do work in digital, and with everything happening, and it's just like social media and the internet and the news cycle, it's just constant, it's nonstop. So it's definitely hard, I think, to find the fine line between like being plugged in, but then also making sure you're disconnecting at times.
Completely agree. I also have different podcasts that I'm in charge of in the social media as well, and it's a hard balance.
Yeah,
of exactly what you're saying, because you're DMing someone and you're late, because what else are you gonna do? And where you used to go out and hang out with friends, go to the gym or go somewhere, you're like, oh, I'm home, I can do this really quickly. And Nastasia gets on me all the time because I am sending emails and DMs at the wrong time of night. You're like, go rest. And I'm like, but I'm home, I can do it now. So yeah, just finding the balance of like the new digital world plus being home and connected. And yeah, definitely.
I think we all can agree that we like, had we known, we should have all put a little money in Zoom, like before all this.
Yeah, 100.
If we only knew how many times a day that we would be on it.
No, 1000%, 1000%.
That and hand sanitizer, whatever brand.
Yeah,
you
or
can
hand
buy, or
or
something like
Lysol something. I don't know. I
that.
get so mad at myself. I'm like, man, there was this one video on YouTube that I found. It was like this one girl, she was explaining the pandemic to her past self. And she was like, you know, you should go and invest in Zoom and you should go do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, man, if only I had a time machine that actually worked, because I've tried building some. And I could go back and tell myself, yo, like, this is what you got to do. First of all, I would get the hell out of America just for, you know, a bit. And prepare myself, invest a little into some hand sanitizer and Zoom. Goodness gracious, I can't tell you. I'm so ready. I'm so ready for 2020 to be over, but I also have to keep reminding myself, it's like all this shit that's going on, it's not exclusive to 2020. Like this is we're going to be in this for a while. At least my thought. I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, but my thought is like going forward, I have to start thinking, what would Frida do? Like in this moment, like how can I make the best decision right now, unapologetically, live boldly, and experience the rest of however long this is going to be, for however long that I have to. So yeah, that's just my thought.
Yeah,
Ranting.
I think I think we all went through the phase of like waiting for life to get back to normal, but I think that now, at least I'm in a period of more acceptance where I'm like, I think that like it's just kind of the normal, at least for a while. I think that even the idea, you know, I never thought that I would miss commuting into work, but like even that, you know, living in New York, getting on the subway and like walking to work and going in this big glamorous magazine tower every day. I mean, it was part of what I loved about my job, and for that to now be distilled to like, I'm just in leggings every day on my laptop. It's just a different vibe. And so for a while, even though it is nice to have the flexibility of working from home, and I'm blessed to even have a job, period. But it was for a little while, a little bit like, okay, like this is cool and all, but like, when are we going back to work? And now it's just like, okay, I think this is just like the new normal. And I think I just have to accept that and just, you know, stop waiting for things to change. Because I think that even when, if ever there is, you know, a vaccine, or there's less of a, you know, if there's not as many spikes in the virus, whatever the case, I think that the way that we all work and the flexibility that we all have to work from home is going to change how we work, period, as a society. So I think that whatever the, whatever the new normal is going to be a very different normal than where we just came from.
Yeah, I completely agree with that statement. I feel like a lot of jobs, a lot of companies have realized, oh, my employees can work from home. Okay. Which is great for a lot of reasons, and I understand. I'm much like you sometimes, though, because even though you're like, oh, commute, but I'm like, just to change the space of where you're from, like, I can't wait till we have a house and have an office. I know that's going to be a change of space of its own, but even just the fact of, like, having that 15-minute break or the half-an-hour break from point A to point B, let alone walking into like a really glam building, of course, in New York City, working for Oprah's magazine. But that aside, just that kind of feeling, and also like dressing up, because you don't really need to, obviously, like what you said, you know, you're in a sweater and leggings, and then that's gonna be fine because it's just your upper part, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's an interesting shift. It really, really is. It's nice to see that we're actually a very productive society, I feel like, at the end of the day, because a lot of people were like, I know it was an old way of thinking. I've found myself working for so many companies saying like, oh, y'all can't work from home. Like, that's not, you know, you're not going to be productive. And you're like, well, you know what, hun? We are.
Yeah.
Whether we like you or not, like, if we like what you do, then you're productive, obviously.
Yeah, but I think, I mean, one of the things that I hope, again, just as people read What Would Frida Do, one of the most interesting chapters to write about was just creativity, and how I feel like it can be, on the one hand, you would think like being home more might be better for creativity because it's like you have more time to like think and be, but also I think just the general heaviness of the world, even for me as a writer or an editor, sometimes it's just like, I just feel like I have no creative juices because I'm like, you know, watching the shit show that is this election, everything that happened with, you know, Black Lives Matter, everything that's going on with the pandemic. It's a lot. And I feel like most nights I just want to turn on like Real Housewives or some like trash reality TV and not really deal with, and not try to, I'm not like in the mood to like write my next book. So I think that it can be hard, but one of the things that, you know, Frida always did was she channeled her pain and heartbreak into beautiful art, and she found ways to kind of dig deep and and bring forward any of those emotions she was feeling onto canvas. And so that's something that I think about too on some of my low moments where I'm just like so over it. I think about the fact of when I think about what would Frida do, I do think that she would try to channel some of those feelings and emotions into art in her own way, which I think for everyone, obviously that art means something different. It might not be actual paintings, or it might not be writing. Maybe it's just like a project that you've been putting off for work, or maybe it's like reorganizing your apartment, whatever it is. I think that channeling those feelings, even when you feel like you're really stuck in a rut, can help us, and is very therapeutic in many ways.
Absolutely. I obviously curse a lot, but
I appreciate it. I'm into it. You're passionate. That doesn't mean you're passionate.
Yeah. You know what? I have to say thank you so much for being on here today and telling us your story. And I feel like I definitely that is absolutely, when you were talking about creativity, yep, I have been having a creative rut this entire year. Yep, I'm having a hard time writing. Yep, I'm spending more time on the business side because creatively I'm just not there at the moment. But I like this idea and this thought process of what would Frida do. And I think I'm going to really ask myself that on a regular basis. Okay, what would this woman do right now in this situation? So thank you for bringing us that and putting this story out there. And I know that you had no hand in this. I know that you had no control, but I thank you for being an Afro Latina and putting this story out there. I feel like we need more representation and more positive role models. I definitely wish that we had more growing up, but I'm so I'm so thrilled. So thank you.
No, thank you. It means a lot to me to be able to bring, to just continue the legacy of this woman who obviously is an icon in general history, but I think also specifically for Latinas and women of color. And so I'm honored to just be a small part of continuing that torch of her legacy, and also to be talking to women like you and on platforms like this where we're having the conversations that need to be happening. And especially I think during this time now more than ever, podcasts like this one that will encourage and inspire people, and even or just give them a break from the reality of their day are so necessary. So thank you both for having me.
Absolutely.
For sure. I'm super thrilled. I can't wait to read your book. I think it's high on the list, of course. Oh my goodness.
Before we go, can we tell everybody where they can find the book, where they can purchase all the platforms that it's on?
Yeah, so What Would Frida Do is available now, and it's on basically wherever your favorite bookseller, so Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all of the places, but also you can check bookshop.org if you want to sell, if you want to support your local independent bookstore, which I'm encouraging people to do. I think during these times, obviously, indie bookstore owners, just like all business owners, need our support. So any of your favorite local bookstore, or if you prefer online retailers, it is available at all of the places. So shop wherever you like.
Awesome. Thank you so much, LaTeaNas. We had a wonderful time. I'm sitting here sipping my coffee. It's not tea today, but I'm so thrilled and I'm so excited. Thank you so much for joining us and for listening, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you, LaTeaNas. Thank you, Arianna.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed your tea.
We know we did.
Be a part of this conversation. Come join us. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Pinterest, and more.
Where you can find us providing the tea y estar lateando con nuestras amigas. And remember,
We are all LaTeaNas.
LaTeaNas.